I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, January 26th, 2013. Don is working under a deadline and can't join me this morning, but it's been an interesting week and we didn't want to just pass over this week's Pearls of Liberty. If you have recently received a paycheck this January, you no doubt noticed that it's less. Taxes went up, take-home pay went down. Hello, Obamacare. And in many respects, I think this has been a difficult month for a lot of people in the liberty movement. We've been waiting for something to happen, and nothing has happened. I think there's some confusion as to whether NESARA is real, whether there's going to be a global financial reset. Even Benjamin Fulford's blog for this past Monday focused a lot on China and Japan, and actually a possibility of a conflict between China and Japan. And things just seem very stirred up. There doesn't seem to be a lot of clarity about where we're going or even really what to hope for. I think that we've been focused on maybe some false hopes, maybe had our hopes in the wrong places, exaggerated expectations, and I think some of this has been instigated or amplified by disinfo and people who are intentionally misleading people in the liberty movement. Drake, NESARA, other icons have all thrown their 2 cents out there, and we can try to evaluate what it all means, but ultimately, no matter what the outcome is of NESARA, many of those other plans that are out there, our hope really is in God. I think David wrote, "Some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we will remember the name of our God." When Israel cried out when they were under cruel bondage in Egypt, and I've just been reading about Moses and all that, that story brings so much up and has so many similarities to the kind of place that we're in. We feel like we're in bondage, we're under tyranny, we're waiting for a deliverer. The people cried out to God in their cruel bondage, and God sent a deliverer in Moses. And there's a very real possibility, that you could be the deliverer that God raises up. And certainly all of us have our part to play as far as waking others up and being a light in whatever dark places we happen to find ourselves, releasing love. But you might have some specific calling, and I think that we all need to be open to that. And Moses resisted it, didn't really want, that's not how he saw himself, that's not where he saw his life going, but he was willing to take it on. And in the whole process, one thing that I thought about this a lot last year as I was reading these passages, that Pharaoh had these signs from Moses, and when after Moses came in and talked to Pharaoh, there would be a sign, and Pharaoh would say, "Yeah, okay, I'll let you go," but then he would make it conditional, or he would rethink it. And I believe there are so many parallels between that and what's going on in our day with the cabal, of them knowing that they need to probably release us to some extent, but really wanting to keep that lid on. Read about it in the book of Exodus, about Pharaoh and how many times he changed his mind. Yes, you can go. No, you can't go. Back and forth. And that must have been incredibly discouraging for Moses and all the people. But, of course, that whole struggle was ended with the Passover. And unfortunately, the firstborn of all of Egypt died. And I suppose theologians might argue whether that had to happen or not. In my mind, it was triggered by Pharaoh's free will to resist. And the longer and the harder he resisted God's plan, the more severe his judgment was. And then finally, and not just his judgment, but the judgment on all the people of Egypt. Finally, after Passover, the people left. And even then it wasn't completely over, because the Egyptians chased them down. The Egyptian army chased them down into the wilderness, and of course the horse and rider was thrown into the sea. You know that whole story, I'm sure, that Pharaoh's army chased Moses after the Red Sea was turned into dry land so that people could escape. Once they got across, the water came back and the army was drowned. So it's a good object lesson in what happens when we resist God, but it's also hope for us when we cry out against tyranny, cry out against cruel bondage, that God does deliver us. And sometimes that deliverance comes in the form of a person. Could be Ron Paul, could be Alex Jones, could be any number of people, could be many people together, could be you. Just be open, hope and pray, and keep trusting that things can change. Keep crying out. Groundhog's Day will be coming up soon, and I think it might be a week from today. Just the idea of feeling stuck. I mean, this goes along even with what I was talking about earlier. I know a lot of people in the liberty movement just feel like, I know Dee wrote in Removing the Shackles, spinning wheels. It just feels like we're stuck and we can't move beyond where we are. And that's the whole Bill Murray movie, Groundhog's Day, of being stuck in that day and repeating that day over and over again. So this is probably a good time for us to examine our lives. And if we have personal issues that are holding us back, fess up. I mean, I don't mean that literally. Maybe it does have to be literal, but be honest with yourself about where you are, what maybe has hindered you from moving to the next place, what you might be able to do differently. And I just want to mention that if you've, in your life, if you've been near leadership, whether it's government leadership, business leadership, church leadership, pretty much in any arena, most people estimate 1 to 2% of the Illuminati are among us, and I've heard estimates as high as 4%. Which means if you've encountered, let's be conservative, 2%, if you've encountered 100 people in your life, odds are that probably about 2 of them have been members of the Illuminati. If you've been close to leadership, even church leadership, education leadership, Christian school leadership, we know from people like Savali that members of the Illuminati do infiltrate these groups, and she knew someone in the Illuminati who had been a Christian school principal. So you've probably encountered these people without being aware of it. It's good to take stock, maybe look back, consider, why do I believe the things that I believe? If there's been an influential person in your life who coincidentally is a member of the Illuminati, you would probably find that you have some ideas rattling around in your head that they put there. I mean, they're trained to influence us without our being aware that we're being influenced. And there's, of course, also television, movies, commercials, whatever you happen to see on the internet. So just think about your beliefs. Why do you believe what you believe? And, center yourself. And just thinking about Groundhog's Day, being stuck in the same place. In the movie, how did Bill Murray get out of the place he was in? He began to feed his soul in ways that allowed him to make a transformation. And I really believe in feeding your soul, you know, maybe classical music, other music that you just love that's not classical, but that has a creative flow to it, something that really touches your heart and something that can open the door for transformation. Of course, there's your own creativity. If you paint, if you sew, whatever you really love, you know, if you really love watching football games and sitting in front of the television, that's cool. But when I say feed your soul, I'm not talking about PABLUM. I'm talking about things that you have to chew on, things that you have to process. And that would be like classical music, even, you know, fine foods, have a wine tasting party. Just raise your level of experience into places that you maybe don't typically go. Like, you know, Bill Murray learned to play the piano. He did good works. He really learned things about himself, was forced to look inward and develop himself. French poetry. So whatever your French poetry and piano lessons are, feed your soul. That will enable you to make whatever transformation you need to make in order to move to the next place. And I thank you for joining me today. I'm sure you've missed Don's presence. He'll be with me again next week. He found a quote that really spoke to me and I feel is very appropriate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. So when I say become centered, feed your soul in ways that allow you to look at yourself. Make the unconscious conscious so that that hidden thing is no longer directing your life and you feel that it's fate, that you are unable to resist it. Don't sabotage yourself. That's my advice. Have a great week and enjoy Groundhog's Day and transform and love one another. Peace.